it should work. So let me only check the YouTube and Twitch. Twitch most likely is not working. Oh, it does. That's a new one. Okay. So, hello everyone, if anyone is in here. I will. And today... Does it work on YouTube though? Oh, it does. And today I will continue on the Goblin. And I wanted to also work a bit on the background and just generally adjust everything. So, as always, if anyone has any questions whatsoever, feel free to ask. And you know the drill. And there is a link to the Discord down below if you want to like step by and send hi and do whatever. And if you want to know that the stream will happen, then all the announcements will be there. And I was also searching for some references for the background, so to see how it might look like. And I found this really nice photo of Wikipedia, and it's basically like a Creative Commons, so everybody can use it and can reuse it and can modify it, but you have to place the source of it. So yeah, this is this. And with this photo, I basically, after adjusting it for like 5 seconds, so I basically, what I did was go display capture, go this, do with it something like this. So I just move the slider to the left to increase the brightness and everything on the levels. And I just masked the parts that are not interesting for me. So this way the background looks a bit nicer, I believe, because this is a photo what makes a lot of sense that it looks nicer. But yeah, this is the general idea that I had for the background, and I might mask a bit more of it because at the moment I only got rid of the background of the sky and everything, and the other things. And I might also paint a bit around the environment, so some of the like brush strokes will actually shine through, so it won't look as photography-y in a sense. But this is still like, I will most likely paint over it, so it won't have like this really heavy photo-y texture, but I feel the scale is much better in this case, and it also added some greens in the background, and I feel those greens actually benefit the scene quite a lot. So yeah, there is this, and it also allows me to later like pick some greens from here and to just develop the background even a bit more, because this is pretty much the color that I wanted to achieve. And later maybe I will do something like in reverse, so I can like go to the right, so I can increase the saturation of the background and the entire artworks. So maybe I will prefer the background to be slightly darker. I don't know at this moment. I have not idea. But even if you compare this to this just looks much nicer, much cleaner. And at this point it's more like photo bashing time of a thing. And hello Mikołaj. I'm also using the low latency type of a thing for the stream. So the videos should be 4K if anyone would like to have a higher quality. Because I have noticed that if I am not using the 4K thing. Oh wait, does it stop working on Twitch already? Oh yeah, it stopped after 5 minutes working on Twitch. Classic. Because if I am not using the 5 for low latency, then you can't pretty much then you can't watch it in high quality. But it also most likely destroys the Twitch, because I don't think you can watch in 4K on Twitch. It seems it broken Twitch immediately. So yeah, it does happen. So in the last stream I did the flat colors for the Goblin and line art is on a separate layer. So as you can see, it looks like this. I can actually duplicate it. And what I want to do now is to combine to create a shadow. I will only also check on a Twitch again, because this is kind of unfortunate that you cannot stream on Twitch. Well, yeah, it does say I am offline. So yeah, Twitch is shit, turns out. Okay, so the plan for today is to block out the shadows and to decide how I want this goblin to be lit. So I will take a bit of a darker hue from the background, and what I want to do first is to decide from where I want to have the light. So basically, if I would draw a sphere, the light will be, this will be the highlight. So I want the light, if you would look at the goblin from the above, this is the direction of a shadow or direction of the light. And if we were to watch it from the side, so this is the goblin, I want the light to drop like this, more or less on him. So I will do exactly this, and all layers, current layer, and I will simply draw the hard shadows on the character, from the things that I suppose should drop a shadow onto itself. So the fingers should not be in light, bottom part of the arm should not be in light. I do believe the ear will be in the shadow. So right now I'm just like blocking the shadows. I do believe the jaw would drop like a shadow like this, the entire head drop a shadow more or less like this. The nose will have some shadow, teeth, basically the entire mouth. The eyes I want to be quite deep in the sockets, so they will be deep in the shadows, what also makes sense if you are having a character that is living in a place where there's like a lot of sun. So he don't have to like squint his eyes all the time before doing this thing. So yeah. And basically now it's like making an educated guesses in a sense on where I expect the shadow to fall, more or less. And at this moment I'm only using a flat color like blue, because really generally speaking the shadow captures the color of the biggest light source, and in this case the biggest light source is a sky, because it's basically like a blue skybox. But also quite a lot of the color of the shadow will be picked up from the reflected light from the ground. So I do believe you can see it on the reference that I had in here. This guy does have a lot of reflections from the ground on him, but also the sun is much stronger, the color on the ground is much more vibrant. Most likely in my case it will be something like this. So yeah, this might even be the same photo shoot because the environment looks really similar, and also the lighting conditions are quite similar, but we will see how it will go. And yeah, for the body references and everything, I was using some references out of Google, so I will be doing just this. And plan for today is, as I said, to block out the shadows, to roughly be able to start rendering, to make him a bit more sexier and to make him look nice. And I was also thinking about the future of this thing, like what I could do next, because this is usually how it goes. I do one thing and then I want to make 10 others. And since recently I started playing a lot of Magic the Gathering again, I guess I will just do some maybe fake Magic the Gathering cards or something like this. But yeah, I do believe, I mean, I don't know how many people watch on Twitch, but maybe I will ditch the Twitch because it just like do not seem to be a great platform for those type of content, in a sense that we don't like high quality stuff. I mean the high video quality. So I don't know. I doubt if there's like a lot of sense in trying to enforce it. I prefer the video to be like 4K on YouTube, but if for any reasons whatsoever any of you prefers to watch on Twitch, I don't know, let me know somewhere. I might actually maybe listen, because honestly I don't see any like upside, like things that will be positive for the Twitch, and this entire thing will be in the shadow. Especially since recently I have seen, not that it affects me anyhow, but I have seen that the Twitch plans to remove the amount of payments for the creators for what they do. So a lot of people already, I heard, are migrating to YouTube. And also, I heard they are going to loosen up some policies on the NSFW stuff. So most likely Twitch will become, will be the next OnlyFans quite soon. But yeah, no one can tell what will happen right now. And the ear will drop like a shadow like this, maybe. So yeah, the ideal situation would be to have a nice photo reference with the exact light setup, but I don't have it. So yeah, it does work. I have to work with what I have. And at first, I usually try to block the solid shapes of the shadows, so I can decide how I want the shadows to be visible, where I want the shadows to be, and I can check if the shadows work. And if I will, in essence, decide that the shadows are indeed working, if I want to quickly check how far away it will cast, like this is like the angle, create a new layer. More or less, this is like an angle of a light that I want to have, that I have in different illustrations, so more or less the shadow will reach like this area. But the thing that I want to do with the shadows is to treat it like sharp shapes, and later I will try to change some shapes to soft things, because usually a sharp shape will be when something is casting a shadow onto something, and a softer shadow you will get when there is a transition over geometry. So for example, there's a rounding on a leg, or there's a rounding on a skirt, or wherever, and it naturally is less and less lit by light. So yeah, those are like the reasons why I want to go sharp first, because later I can really easily modify all those shadows. And now I kind of wonder if I want maybe to have, this is not the line art, where is the line art? This is the line art. If I maybe want to have a line art to also be cropped to everything, because I could at this point, as you can see, turn off the line art, and the Goblin is pretty much readable. So yeah, but I also sometimes like to have a line art for all the deep shapes and deep shadows and everything. So I might actually leave it, but maybe on a lower opacity. So let's leave it at 50% right now. And also now I can add a layer with a light. So our sun is like yellow, pretty much. Yellowish, because I want it to be a bit warmer. So I'm choosing like this beige type of a color. Kind of like the background, but maybe I will go a little bit more yellowish with it, because sun is yellow. And I can add some light with screen would be accurate, but linear dodge add on a really low opacity works nice, or linear dodge add on a really dark color also works nice. So those are like two methods of adding the color. I guess adding using like the darker color for it works better, because then you can keep the opacity 100%. And if you want some places to be brighter, you can just like select a brighter color, what makes a lot of sense. So yeah, and also my favorite trick, as always, in here, current layer from color picker, and color picking is much easier. And the same story with this layer. I want it to be fully sharp, so it will only allow me to make like sharp stains for the light. So I will only lit it as I want it to. And I try to keep in mind constantly where I want to have a highlight, and I try to think more or less sometimes where I expect the highlight to appear. So I don't want the entire thing to be like bright. I want only to have like this highlight type of a thing, like in here, unless I expect the geometry to be lit a bit to be lit a bit more. And if the area is bigger, I can always like tap gently with it, so it will also create a nice texture. And I do have some ribs visible in here, so I wanted him to have some like ribs here and there. And also on one of the revs that I have been using, I guess it will be this layer. Yeah, as you can see, this guy has like really strongly protruding collarbones. And this is the thing that I definitely wanted to keep in mine illustration. So I want the collarbones to also have this like really strong like light source on them. And even though, for example, the traps are in the shadow, they still will reflect some light from like the top, from the general dome of a color. So this color possibly should be maybe blue. Yeah, it should be more bluish. So I won't add a light in the shadows like this. I will add it only in the light places, and then I will create another layer with the light that is not from the, with a light from the sky. So actually the areas in the shadow will be lit with the blue light, not with the sunlight, because the sunlight is yellowish. And the thing is, yeah. And on the skirt, parts of it will be brighter and parts of it will be darker. Thus due the grass will like sometimes stick out and it will like just be colored a bit more. So I don't want to overdo it by accident. Same with the spear. It's not directly lit, it will be slightly lit here and there. I don't want to like really overdo it. Yeah, the lip will be brighter. And I need to turn this off. Maybe some of the light will like hit here. But most likely it will be rather delicate because it's not like perpendicular to the light source. So to make it a bit easier, if the arm is like to the side maybe and the light goes like this, then it still lits the thing. But now when I also look at it, I feel I should have give him some shadow in here. Maybe this area will be a little bit more in the shadow. So yeah, and this is also why studying light is kind of okay thing to do. It makes stuff like this much easier. And also, since I started including this a little bit more, let's say, controlled approach to light and everything began to be much easier. In a sense, it's easier to start an illustration to just later fuck it up with rendering. So yeah, the more you know. Linear.add. All layers, I will take a dark sky color, choose a darker sky color, webs, paint, and now I want to add some reflected light, even darker. I have to go, even dark. It will be really dark. I want some of the light to be like reflected here and there. In the shadows, some of the sky, but not a lot. And in the shadow layer, which one is it? I can now, because this is like set on a multiply, now I can go to the multiply. I will select current and below, maybe, no. I'll just select all layers. I will select the color of a light from the environment. I will log the alpha channel on it, so every time that I draw, it will draw only on the shadows, on the shadow layer. So if I go to normal, everything I paint will be clipped to the shadow color. So multiply, and now I can experiment with the hues. So I want to add a little bit of this like warm light reflected from the ground. So for example, it should be mostly visible on this like boots or something, because they are mostly like in the warmer area. so they won't be as blue, they will be slightly more colored. The fingers will reflect some of this light. The stomach might reflect some of it. Maybe a bit here and there, but I don't want to really overdo it because I just want the shadows to have like different hues to them. And the areas, for example, like the arm in here, they also should have it because they are like directly pointing to the ground, so the light have the occasion to reflect and bounce off of it. And now I can also smudge the shadows, so I will take a brush that is smudgy. And in the areas where it's not a sharp shadow, I can like soften the edges. So this will be slightly on a cast shadow. This will be softer because it's like rounding of the geometry, not really like casting a shadow. So only the things that will cast a shadow actually will be slightly sharper, but still not like 100% sharp. I just want some of smudging here and there. Not much, just a bit. So it should make the things a little bit more like 3D in a sense. And if I will feel the shadows are not deep enough, I can always like adjust them with layers and whatnot. Check it. And they should be slightly darker. Yep. And with the lights, the same story. Softer lights here and there. Oops. Current layer. And this thing. And if you ever have been in here like on the previous streams, you might know that I like to leave the line art, because then when I overpaint on everything, I can like go from top to the bottom, and I will make sure that I will go over every single area without like skipping an area. So if I see a line art, it means I skipped the area. So I will better know the shadow from the bones. Actually, this one might cast a shadow on the forehead actually, but I don't like how it looks like, so I will just skip it and say it does not affect it. I can always add it relatively easily. And also for the shadows, I can select this layer and go slightly darker, because for example in here also a lot of green light will happen. So the first thing that I will do is select a darker shadow, and I will try to add something that will be a bit more like the ambient occlusion. So where the geometry kinda is near together, where it's like clumping, the shadow should be slightly darker, because the light has more problems to bounce off properly. So yeah, so it's basically like ambient occlusion type of a thing. And the closer the geometry is, the darker the tones should be. So for example, the armpit area and everything should just be slightly, ever so slightly darker. I could do it on a separate layer, like the entire ambient occlusion pass, but nah, let's try to keep it relatively simpler if I can. And the hand inside will be much darker. So yeah, let me also check again. Maybe Twitch started to work. I kind of wonder if it does. If it did. Canal. Oh yeah, it sometimes works. Or maybe it's just the fact that I'm streaming and trying to view it, it does not work. Maybe it unclogged itself, I don't know. Yeah, but the basic idea is, as you can see, if I... Which one is a line art? If I turn off the line art, then it looks relatively okay-ish. And line art dodge, because I want some of this... Wait, where is this? Shadows, linear dodge, because I want some of those colors also from the ground reflected on the legs, but not that much. Create a new layer, linear dodge, add, grab a color from the background, make it much darker. Just add it maybe even more saturated. Just add it as a reflection and reduce the brightness. So what I'm doing now is pretty much to create a base for the painting. It's not about the details at the moment, it's all about the light and stuff like this. And later I can refine it. Of course, the more refined I would do it like right now, the easier it will be for me later to like refine it even further. But it won't be fun to make everything easy. So I will make everything ever so harder if I can from time to time. Just because I prefer to work this way. So for example, the multiply, the shadows, not all layers, but current layer. Whoops. The stomach should be slightly darker. And also in the shadow in here, I can maybe add a new layer. Let's try it. Color. And because the light in here is a little bit more greenish, I can also colorize the shadow in here to be slightly more green, because a lot of green light is reflected in here due to the sun reflecting from the skin. So let me just like reduce the opacity slightly, so someone made a mistake. Classic. And also this is why I really like this brush, because it allows me to really nicely create those effects that, for example, there are some strains on like skin and whatnot. So like the striations on the muscles, you can really easily see it. It creates just like nice amount of detail, and some of the shadow from the boat, a bit of it only here and there. Some muscles here, softer shadow here, and later I can of course always paint all the things that I feel that is missing from it. I kind of wonder if this would cast the shadow on the hand. Not sure, but it actually could. Depends on the position, but the hand might be in shadow actually from the body. I'm not sure if it will be. Do I prefer it with? I prefer it without the shadow. I can always change this later. So, as you can see with the line art, it looks nicer. And the cool thing about keeping everything separated is now, for example, I can decide that I want the light to be more or less saturated. I can decide for it to be brighter, darker. It gives me a lot of control over everything that I do. So if I want the entire thing to be a little bit more cartoonish, I would increase the saturation and decrease the light, for example. Then it will have this more cartoony vibe, or I can go a bit more realistic in a sense. You could call something like this realistic. And yeah, let me remove this, let me remove that. Let me decrease the opacity of the line art to 25% and make a duplicate for it so I can always get back to it if I need to, and just simplify everything to one layer. And now I can start rendering actually. For the ears, I don't think they will be red. I do believe I did it in the troll, in a cyclop, that they are slightly more red, a bit. But they have a different shape. The troll also a bit, but it shouldn't be like this, I believe. Where is the goblin? Here's the goblin. Because the light is not really shining through the ears from the back. The light is kind of shining in front of them, so they should like grab all the colors and everything. But anyway, let me start rendering this fella. And again, now it's like just to choose the brushes and current layer to all layers. And now this is like the cool part. So just reduce the opacity and do all the shit that I feel is nice. So I can of course increase the different hues in the colors. So I will choose some yellow hues here and there. I will choose some like brown hues, some red hues, just to increase the color spectrum on a goblin. So he will look a bit more interesting. And even the shadows on the face area, I do believe they could be much more saturated. So they could go more greenish in colors because there's like a lot of like light around it that is green, a lot of reflected light. So it might actually dye the shadows. And the deeper the shadow, the more saturated it will get. This is like one of the best tips I have ever gotten. And it really simplifies a lot. And it's not like entirely true that it works like this. But the really general idea is the more like white light you have at something, the brighter and less saturated it will get. The less light you have on something, for example, no, the deeper the shadow, the more saturated the color will get. Because there's like no white light that will mess up with the hue of it. And I need to only remember that, for example, in here to this color, I will need to add slightly a bit more blue because still this area is slightly, ever so slightly lit by a blue light from also from the sky. So it usually should be only in the area of this Fresnel type of a thing on the like harder angles, but yeah. And also, if anyone is new in here and maybe you have not heard it, if you have any artwork that you would like me to go through, just to, I don't know, comment, maybe paint over something or give a critique or whatever, feel free to drop a link. I will try to go over it. So maybe it will like, maybe some of you will find it a bit helpful this way. And I also changed the brush because I wanted to have this like sharp and soft edge type of a situation going on here. And from time to time I will zoom out to see how it looks like. Because it might happen that I will do something for like a long period of time zoomed in. Then I will zoom out and then I will decide that it looks like shit and I have to scratch everything and start over. So yeah, I want this to not happen. But sometimes it will happen. And in some places, like for example near hair and everything, sometimes you might get a really weird looking color. So for example, you might look at it and you might clearly see that it is blue color, but it turns out it is pretty much green in terms of a hue, or more like a cyan. And it often happens because when there's like a lot of one color in the area where we are looking at, the brain sometimes try to intentionally search for the opposite color of it. So it will make the grays color appear more colorful than they actually are. So just sometimes you can use it to your advantage, so you don't have to use, for example, really like bright reds or bright blues or bright whatever, because the brain will kind of fill the gaps that we do have. And also remember about the saturation. And this is also a really common problem in the artworks of someone who is just like really just starting out, because you will notice that their artworks seem to be kind of like washed out. So they look in a sense kind of dirty. This is also something that I'm really guilty of. A lot of my renderings look kind of dirty. So, and this is like the dirty look is kind of usually the caused by the lack of knowledge of colors and the relations between them. So it's a thing that you can kinda like learn to not do, but also you have to practice it. So knowing this won't help that much if you don't really practice reducing these effects. But the cool thing about Photoshop is you can pretty much always adjust something. So if I will, for example, need more green in it, like in here, I can always like just use some curves to increase the amount of green or to reduce the amount of green, or if I will need more red in it, I can just increase the amount of red. So even though sometimes you might paint the colors that are like pretty incorrect in the first try, it's not the end of the world. You can pretty much always fix it, always rework it. Also, this guy is relatively small in terms of a canvas size, because the canvas size is quite big, but this guy by himself is just like smaller guy. It does not really leave me with tons of pixels around his face to work with. So yeah. And also in here you can see that initially the colors are really going close to grays. I want them to be quite saturated, so I have to like manually select much more saturated colors. So most likely when I was choosing the colors on the multiply layer, I just chose the color that is not like vibrant enough. So this way the shadow, and because of this the shadow is really like pale and washed out, and washed out shadows don't usually look nice. If I want to increase the saturation, I can always go like this, and yeah, I'll just work on it. He kinda has a Sylvester Stallone like feel to it now. Kinda does like him a bit, especially the face, like the eye. Huh. Or at least it reminds me of Sylvester Stallone. So yeah, more rendering. Then at this point it's just like, I think I will just go with the passes. So I will like do the entire thing, then like run through the entire thing to a certain degree, then I will run through the entire thing again to achieve another degree of completion, and to work 3 passes like this, and it should be like fine to say that it's done. I kind of want the Goblin to look a little bit on the dumber side, not on the like lazy side, because now they look kind of like lazy. So one of the ways that you can easily make something look dumber is to like give him like uneven eyes. So one could look like there, and one could go to the side. It will make him look kind of stupid. But you have to try. Just you need to see what will work in your case for your illustration, what won't. There is no like one thing that you can do to achieve a certain result. The problem with the faces is usually you really need to be extremely subtle with it, because we are quite good as humans to recognize the facial features and everything, because we pretty much like evolved this way to look at a face of a different person, and we tend to really be good at distinguishing the emotions. And this is also the reason why when you are painting a face, you should spend a little bit more time on it to make sure that the face that you are painting actually matches what you want to achieve. Because, for example, it's a really thin line between some different emotions in the way how they look like. And it will be kind of awkward to wanted to make, for example, something that must be angry, but it looks like it's going to cry or stuff like this. There's a lot of subtleties that you need to be aware of when you are actually like doing an illustration. And in faces, this is hard, like in particularly hard. I want to give him some highlights here and there. And from time to time, I will zoom out, rotate it, because I want to be able to look at it from a distance. I also might try doing stuff like this. So for example, I can take greens and just see, whoops, and overpaint to connect it. I press Ctrl U, so I basically open the color thing, and I just go to yellows in this case, and I can just use the slider to see. Maybe I want him to be, for example, less vibrant, but yeah, as you can see, even though he looks like green, vast majority of the colors on his body is actually yellow. So I can just like change it. I kind of like this tone, slightly more vibrant, not so much, but slightly more vibrant. And for the blues, again, almost nothing. Magentas, almost nothing. And reds, yeah, reds I can also change quite a lot. So the reds I also want to be slightly brighter. And it's not a big change, but as you can see, the change is quite noticeable after I play a bit with some sliders. And for example, now I only need to rework the sash because I messed up the colors on the sash and on a hair. So I want to bring those a little bit more to the red hues, but actually I will move back from everything and select those first so they won't be affected by the adjustment. Select those with the bones and with a stick, because I don't want the stick to be affected at all. I like the color of the stick. Ctrl Shift I to invert the selection. And yeah, now I can play with the hues and everything. Reds, rest the greener side. Yeah, so now as you can see, if I turn back from everything, yeah, the color changes, subtle but not as noticeable. And this is exactly what I wanted to achieve, pretty much. Whoops. And yeah, and the biggest thing that pretty much is happening right now for me is again like playing Magic the Gathering again. I decided to pick up some cards. And I started playing with a friend of mine, and I decided to make like a goblin deck, like a proper goblin deck. Hello, Naimo. To make like a proper goblin deck, and to also make a mill deck, because mill decks are really annoying, and I like annoying decks. So playing annoying cards is fun for me. And it's also fun to annoy a friend of mine, so yeah. This one looks a little bit too smart for my liking. Maybe he should have like the entire kind of like the poopy eyes in a sense. Yeah, it does kind of work. Might change it later. Yeah, and also the latency on a stream is much bigger now, as I said previously, so anything you write I will see with like a delay. So if you say anything and I will respond to it after like several seconds, then it's because of the latency. Supposedly the latency helps the stream to be stable, but nah, I don't see it, like any drastic improvements. I wish I could go back to Diablo redesigns, but I guess that era is behind me. And now when I finish this one, I want to do some Magic the Gathering things. So yeah, because I would like to at some point do a Magic the Gathering card. So I might as well practice some illustrations because I have not done any illustration in a really longest time. So yeah, might be worth it. Some red hues for the lips. Same here, darker, more saturated color for the lips in here. Web. I think this entire area will be in a shadow, and also the nose will cast a shadow onto the bone. And the light will reflect off of it, so it will be visible still. Darker, more saturated colors in the areas that have a hard time to reflect light, and it all should be good. Also shadow from the piercing, the bony thing. Since the bone is white, I might actually make it much brighter, so the reflection of light will be actually slightly nicer. Shadow from a lip to it. This area usually looks nice if you just like go really sharp in the edge to like push the edges, like push the contrast on the edges. It tends to make look everything a bit better. Yeah. And again, the best case scenario is I would like take a photo of a goblin on a field like this, but you can't have everything. Sometimes you have to work with what you got. Add some like unevenness to his nose. Much darker. And because I want also the eyes to be like a focal point for this character, I might actually increase the contrast in the eyes. So I will make them intentionally much darker. So the local contrast will be a bit bigger and much more saturated than it needs to. So this way there's a huge chance it will look just a little bit more appealing, a little bit better, and just drop of a reflected light of the ear from the sky. And the ear, because in the end it will be slightly more reddish, I will apply a bit darker color here. Or strapped. I will remove the piercing for a second. I will add the piercing in the end as like a detail. And sometimes if you are struggling with colors and like making everything brighter, you can just use the tool that you cannot see right now, the dodge tool. It's in here. Go to like highlights, for example, reduce the exposure to like 10% because it usually it's really strong type of a tool. I'd like to use it with brushes with textures, so when I use it, actually it also gives me some texture. So as you can see, 10% is quite a lot. 5% might be like more than enough, just like highlight the area slightly, or you can just take a soft brush and just go over everything a bit and check with the protect tones without protecting tones. You might like different results. Whoops. And if you think some areas are a bit too rough in a painting, you can always smudge them, so the geometry will appear a bit cleaner. Highlight. Kinda also now reminds me a bit of a Houston Jones, the bodybuilder from YouTube that does a lot of dumb shit, because he sometimes makes this like stupid looking faces, and this kinda does look like him. Whoops. More saturation in the ears. More saturation in here. Because again, the thing that I would like to avoid is washed up colors, so they don't look like dirty, but it's also really easy to overdo it, so I also don't want it to be like extremely bright, extremely dark. So if I will like make it too dark, then it will look kinda off. I can always make it brighter, so it's not that big of a deal. Yep, and those look like this. And now the deeper shadows in the neck. But again, stuff like this is quite easy to overdo. Most likely I will do just this later in the stages of painting this guy. I have this tendency to overdo the rendering from time to time in some places. One of the things that I would really like to learn at some point is to like use the bare minimum of the rendering in colors. A lot of Asian artists actually work this way. So they just like use really precise color combinations, and because of this you can clearly see all the like brush strokes of just like a circle round brush. But it makes everything look like really just nice. And it's a skill that requires a really high understanding of light and color, so and a lot of those artists, like the Asian artists, are painting in a really similar manner. I will add the nips in the end. So I wonder if there is like a school that teaches this type of an approach, or is this like the general way a lot of Asian artists just work due to the resources that they have available in the net, in the web. Yeah, and also with the light and the shadow, I'm kind of trying to sculpt a bit more with it. So for example, the brush strokes, I try to kind of like wrap them around the form to kind of make it maybe a bit easier to define the form. So for example, on the chest, I will like try to wrap them around a bit more. You could actually see how the paint is happening. The stomach definitely is a tricky area because it's like flat, but not really. Kind of like protruding, but not really. There was this cool reference for the abdominal muscles out of this guy, yeah. I want to have this reference on top because I really like everything that is happening in here. And also, let me just go to the display capture. Also, as you can see for the colors, if I open the color window, the one in the light are quite desaturated, and the deeper we go with the shadows, the more saturation we get. So in my case, it's similar, but my shadows are really desaturated. So I know I messed up the shadows. The layer that I get should be much darker, much more saturated. So I have to work on it and later add some reflections. And here I messed up the setup, so this happens. But also this is the reason why, for example, I kept the this version where I still have the shadows on a separate layer, because now I can do this, apply the shadows, and I can increase the saturation. No, definitely not, but I increase the multiply for it, and I can make the shadows darker. And by making them darker, I don't make them more saturated, so I can increase the saturation of a layer. And will this solve a problem? The shadows are still not as saturated as I wish them to be. So maybe I should make another layer with the saturation instead and see how it performs if I reduce. If I increase the saturation, it really does not do any nice difference, but I kind of like the sharper shadows on him. Do I? No, I don't like, but I can maybe select the shadows, Control U them, and increase the saturation via the sliders. I can make them darker and more saturated. This will kind of solve the problem. So it's not a big change, but it is noticeable. And I can pretty much do the same thing without using this layer and just like moving those around. The levels. So yeah, a lot of unnecessary steps, but sometimes you have to go through it to find a better solution. And I will also reduce the opacity and the flow for display and go Photoshop, pure Photoshop. Increase the opacity, keep the flow reduced. And I forgot that I have a navigator in here, so I can constantly check how it looks like on a smaller scale. What is always a good idea. If you can do it, just do it. It always works. But for some, the navigator actually might really slow down their PCs, their Photoshop. In my case, all the external windows that are displaying something in Photoshop are really slowing it down. But the king of slowing down my software actually at the moment is rulers. So if I turn on the rulers, it will mess up my performance of Photoshop really significantly. Just somehow managed to like make the ruler destroy the Photoshop. So yeah. But at this point, I guess every single time that I stream, I could like list some of the things that are like broken in PS. It's like a common theme already. But maybe one day they will fix it. One could wish. I'm also again trying to stand while working, so I can maybe not get a lot of movement during the day, but at least I can get some of the challenge for my skeleton and for my body to do. So yeah. And actually standing and painting is really cool. I highly recommend it to everyone. Just nice way to kind of tire yourself out in a sense. Not that I find like standing for 2 hours like extremely tiring, but it can be a bit tiring. And recently, because I was not standing up for like a really long period of times, for quite a long time, I was not using the standing desk, I had sore muscles in the ones that are like on the inside of the thighs that pull the bone to the center. I don't remember. Abductors? I believe this is abductors or adductors. Abductors. Because abduct. This kind of makes sense. Mm. Reflections. This is kind of fun. I kind of would like to do the giant now. I kind of wish I started with a giant, but I guess since the giant will be like the most complex one, he's like the thickest boy out of all of the boys in here. I want to leave him. I mean, leaving him as the last one is actually the smartest decision, because he will take the biggest amount of a brain power to execute him properly. And the most annoying one will be a wolf. This is just like a boring creature to draw, I would say. Hard, maybe, a bit, but I would say it's more boring than hard. Just like, simply annoying. Because drawing animals is generally like hard. And in my case, maybe I wouldn't say extremely hard, but it's kind of not that fun. I will try to do it. I might actually grab some colors from this guy because I like the hue of red. It's not necessarily the hardest thing, but I don't really enjoy drawing animals that much. Depends on the animal, of course, but if I could choose something different, I would definitely not go for the animal if I would have a choice. But on the other hand, as always, as I say, or at least tend to say, if there is something that you don't want to do, most likely this is like the exact thing you should be doing, because you are just like forcing yourself out of the comfort zone, and it's always a good thing to do so. I will keep this trap on a separate layer. So I have the strap separated because it will be lighter, easier for me to like paint over it and to render the entire like chest area first, and then to add a strap onto the painting. Just a more natural way to work with it. And also while painting, I really like to rotate my canvas. I remember, I think I talked about this like at some point, but a lot of people say that you shouldn't like rotate your canvas. I was always like in the opposite group of people. I would be like, if you can rotate it, just rotate it. Sometimes it's just much easier to draw something while you are rotating. You have like this preferable angle of work. There's like no reason to not rotate if you feel like rotating. It does go like this, and like this, and like that, here and there. So yeah, now making the stomach look a bit rounder seems to be a more manageable task. The chest should be a bit darker. It won't have that much light on it. But this part will have, or should have, a bit more to it. I kind of feel I lost control over the shadows. So I don't feel like I fully know what I'm doing with the colors of the shadows. So I guess I will just have to brute force it. I will just try to figure it out, and hopefully it will look okay at some point. And most likely I will end up fixing those like constantly all the time until I decide that I kinda like it. So areas like this are kind of tricky, especially with all the light reflecting around it, because the green skin is not like a thing that we are used to look at naturally. I don't think there are like a lot of things that have like a green skin, not like a scales or something like this. I have no idea if there's like even any creature like that in real life. So when you are like reflecting all this green light from green light to green light, all this like addition of colors, of hues and whatnot, of saturation is kinda, maybe not overwhelming, but kinda brain burning. It's in the front of a delt. Won't be in that big of a shadow, and that big of a light, but this part might be. And again, it's easy to compare on a miniature if what I do look sensibly. Now I feel this entire chest area is slightly off. It should be brighter, I believe. And the shadow in here will be soft. It's not like a cast shadow, this is like a shadow due to the geometry changing. Also, one of the things that the trick that I have seen once was to do something, well, not like this, but when you finish painting a face of a monster, to just like absolutely blur the shit out of it, because this will give you like a nice kind of base and then sharpen it again, like to paint over it like all the sharp stuff. I might try to do it later because, for example, it will allow me to get rid of all the unnecessary lines in here. And also the skin has like this natural kind of like blurry face to it, so it will remove a lot of the unnecessary details from the brushwork, but leave the core information that is in here, that I have in here. We'll see. It might make sense actually, because honestly it does not really matter how it looks like up close, it does matter how it looks like right in here. So this is what mostly interests me. And this is also the reason why I really like the dodge tool, because it allows me to like rework the light, like add some light here and there. And the softer and the more subtle the brush is, the less problems I have with it. So actually adding the content to the render things with light is just much easier. And if some areas are like this, I can always like soften them to make them appear a bit smoother. And later I can retexture them. So again, I mostly care about the miniature view at this moment. Like the first pass can even be like really blurry, and the next pass will be like rendering and whatnot. Also blurring this at this point, it will also remove a lot of the line art that I left intentionally. So it will kind of get rid of the thing that I wanted to paint over anyway. What might be a good thing to happen, because now I can, for example, add those really like sharp shadows in here from the TT slightly. Something like this with it. I also feel the bone should have a little bit more of this like beige color to it. And the reflection for it will be a bit more like warm because it's mostly like oriented to the ground type of a thing. So yeah. Whoops. So I do feel it makes a bit more sense. So again, it's like just reworking the ideas and verifying them on the spot. I can decide that it looks odd and just work over it or work through it. But the bones, since they are like white, especially if you have like a dead bone or something like this on you, they tend to like really reflect the light. So because I don't want to like overburn it, overexpose it, so I would like to avoid having like white spots anywhere, like pure white, maybe in some like really some of the highlights. I will always try to paint over it so it will like tone down a bit more when I'm doing it. Whoops. For hair and stuff like this, actually a mixer brush tool could be relatively nice. So let me go to the display capture for a second. Yeah, so if you press right in here and select the mixer brush tool, if you select like a brush like a circle, you can basically press Alt, select the source, and now I will be painting with the face of a goblin. But if I will select something like in here, that basically gives me like this type of a thing. I can even change a brush to something a little bit more like organic, so like this, and reselect the source, so it will give me like this 3D effect of a thing. You can also prepare the brush like this. Now I can like paint with it, and usually the best one is not custom but dry heavy load. So the dry heavy load will make sure that you don't run out of paint, because if you select, for example, a very wet heavy mix, then it will like mix heavily with anything that is in here. And if you just go like, for example, wet light mix, does it end? No. Dry light load, for example. So I'm painting and the paint is like running off, so you can just only do as much as you want. But if I will take a dry heavy load, so it does not run out of paint in a sense, now I can just like paint over it with like containing this kind of 3D effect of a brush. Or I can just go mix, like wet heavy mix, and just paint with it, and it will also affect like mix with anything that is underneath it. So as you can see, it does something like this. Sometimes it's a cool thing to do, sometimes not. That depends on what you want to achieve. Personally, I like the dry heavy load most because, yeah, as you can see, it allows me to make hair easily, and then I can go to like very wet heavy mix, because then it will allow me to smoothen everything out properly and just grab a paint from all over the place around it and mix it properly. So now he looks like, now I kind of overdid everything on his head, but you get the idea, I believe. I want the hair strands to be like much thinner. I don't want to have him like this thick bushes of hair. I kind of want those to have like those nest type of a haircuts, so it will look literally like a nest that has like its own life. And to make sure that it reads like as a thin hair strands in a sense, I need to like leave some of the thinner lines here and there to suggest the pattern, to suggest the material it's pretty much made out of. And for stuff like this, sometimes it's beneficial to go, for example, to rotate it completely vertically, because then your brain kinda interprets it in a bit different fashion. Then you can focus more on the shape instead of the details, or on the thing that it is, how to say it, or on the thing that it is. So yeah, now like I'm seeing her, now I'm not seeing her because I'm not used to like looking at certain objects from this angle, so the brain has easier time to focus on what is important. The bones. Whoops. It does go like this. I think I officially run out of the ideas on what I can say or what I can talk, so I think I might keep quiet, or I might actually, I don't know, tell you about the deck that I built in Magic the Gathering. So basically my main deck is the mill deck, and I basically throw the entire library of yours into the trash. So you will put a lot of stuff from your library to the graveyard or to even exile. And I do enjoy those type of decks because they use like a certain mechanic that is just annoying. And having annoying decks is fun. But as I said, not for the players that are milling their decks, but for me to just see a friend of mine frustrate over a certain card that just like obliterates his decks. But yeah, also now it was the first time ever when I actually bought some cards, like singles, because usually I tend to box a booster packs just to like randomize the cards and just have fun randomizing, but on a long run it's expensive, and the chances that you will like randomize a card that actually has a value for your deck from a current set is low, and more often than that, the deck won't have the exact card you might even need. So if in my first time ever I bought a singlet, single cards to just boof a decks. And I can easily say, just teach your kids to play Magic the Gathering and they won't have any money for doing drugs or alcohol or whatever. This shit's expensive. Especially some of the cards, especially the goblins actually, because I also wanted to build a goblin deck. Because goblins are just fun. I always liked goblins as creatures. I always find them like funny and entertaining, especially in Magic the Gathering. They're kind of wonky and all over the place. But the deck for goblins is just expensive. It requires, like, there are not a lot of goblins in Magic the Gathering, and the deck requires a lot of like strong buffing creatures, like legendary creatures, or a lot of chieftains, war chiefs, and whatever. And those cards really hurt financially. So, but and still, those are cool cards. At some point, I hope I will build a nice goblin deck. But also at this point, I thought like, Maybe actually the more interesting or more creative part in a sense will be to like maybe redo some old magic artworks. So I will take like a really old ass card and just redo the artwork. Or maybe I will try to invent some of my own cards just for fun of building cards and whatnot. Or maybe I will just do some tokens. For example, a token for a goblin, a token for a zombie. Like those basic type of shit. And then I can like print them for my own deck, so I will have like a custom token cards, which is always nice. I have seen another, like a lot of other artists do it, so I guess it makes a lot of sense to maybe do something like it. And I also feel the bones should be slightly brighter in the darkest areas. I might select them. I kind of feel that those are too dark in the below, because bones are pretty much white, so I can select this area. This brighter, this darker. So I feel this should be more like this. Possibly. They wouldn't be so high contrast. But yeah. This part of her looks odd. And everything, every time a strand will go out to his like head, I need to remember to cast a proper shadow for it. So yeah. And I feel the goblin is coming along relatively okay-ish. Hope maybe like three streams will be enough for this fella. Like, do him to a level that is kind of acceptable. And the hardest part, draw a cloth. Well, the hard part actually will be to paint the skirt, like match all the details. I might use some hefty photo bashing techniques for it. And then paint over it. And also smudging kind of reminds me of Konstantinos Kanteridis artworks. He tends to smudge a lot in his paintings, but oh man, Konstantinos is just on another level as an artist. He is a beast of a craftsman. So the problem with using photos in the background is it will give you a lot of details that you might not want to have in the background. So you really need to outdo yourself with the rendering of a character actually to make it work nicely. So this is also one of the reasons why I might still change the background to be a little bit more painterly, or maybe I will just adjust it with some adjustments to make it look a bit more like less photo-y. Feel this chest area should be slightly more flat. This area should be slightly ever so slightly darker. And the tits in here actually might have this like fun and this type of a shape, because this muscle goes like, well, like this, and this goes like this. They basically go like this, and they like attach in how to say it, this thing that you use to blow air on your face when it's hot. I forgot how it was called. I forgot the word, but they kinda fun, like a paper fan. They kinda remind me of I mean, those are pretty much built, attached, like fans are built. So yeah. This I forgot. I did not wanted it to be a cloth. I forgot I wanted to be like a piece of leather. So I will change the shape a bit. This was supposed to be a leather animal hide. So I will take a heavy textured brush that leaves this like this type of a texture, and I will just like whoosh it with it. It will have this like leathery feel to it. I will incorporate some different hues to it, and actually brushes from HoMM tutorial. The brushes of Brad Rigney might be extremely good for it. Actually, the brushes of Brad Rigney are just good for like photorealistic type of things. I would need to spend much more time with them to like learn to use them, because he has like a lot of cool textured brushes that are extremely subtle. So they do those things where you just like lightly touch something somewhere and it starts working just right. But you have to be like really subtle with everything that you do. His brushes are definitely extremely cool. And I highly recommend his tutorials also, especially the one on the gumroads. They are extremely good. The HoMM tutorial is great, to put it simply. But as you can see, for example, this brush is really nice to make soft transitions, and it gives this like, hard to say, but really subtle noisy texture. It makes the skin feel that it has all those small bumps and everything. Like it. I believe this brush is also his. And because I want it to be the animal hide, I also would love to paint some sort of a pattern on it that might suggest that it is a hide. But this type of a thing should be okay-ish. And then I might try to smudge it with some lines. Maybe this will work actually. If I will increase the strength. The smudging will like kinda naturally imbue the colors into everything. And then I can also sharpen it with a brush that actually leaves some sort of a brush stroke. So again, it's kind of like working on something, then blurring it and just adding some details here and there to suggest the sharper detail. I do believe a lot of artists also do sketches like this. They tend to, I think Alex Konstad was working this way, that they were doing the low quality sketches and just sharpening them here and there, and it was like really enough to produce something that looked high quality because of the really strong contrasts happening all over the place. Actually, on this one, I do believe I can include some more colors. Maybe some, definitely more saturation. I don't know why I keep forgetting about the saturation. Not a thing that I usually do that much right now, so not sure why it's that, but I do need to remind myself about the saturation. I was talking a lot about not making a washed out artworks, and I will end up making a washed out artwork. Yep. Need to add some like brighter strands for it. So now I kind of try to like paint the texture of a fur. Not to be extremely precise with it, but just to indicate it in the moment. For the skirt, I might actually just grab the colors. Well, just grab the colors from the background, because it will pretty much have the exactly same hues and colors and everything as the background does. So I guess I will start with the darker layers, like much darker, much more saturated layers for it. Kind of defies now when I look at it, like the point of this multiplayer layer I did. I paint over all the shadows with a different hue, but at least it gives me the idea of the shape of the shadows. But yeah, I will just try to like paint it with all the details and suggest the material at the moment. Darker. And this area won't really be in the shadow as I marked it would be. This will kinda cast a shadow, but not that much, because a lot of stuff is sticking out of the hay, however to say it, and out of this thing. Yeah, that's definitely a tricky thing to paint. Fuckload of lines overlapping each other. Maybe this will actually work. Just like line over it like 1,000 times and just constantly keep slightly brighter colors toward the like front, so it will look a bit more 3D ish. I also kind of don't buy the fact that this should be that dark. I believe it should be slightly brighter. The back to be a little bit more red, so I will just grab the colors from the dude on the right. Add them here. Yeah, a lot of guessing, unfortunately now. Not a lot of like saying what it does. Ah, there, I guess. Kinda like how it progresses. Just remove the old colors from the strip, from the belt. It does look kinda nice-ish. The shadowing here definitely will be deeper, because it must be a bit more like, if it means to be straight, like be tight on his body, and let's say something heavier is in here, then this thing will cast a deeper shadow because there's like a concave shape in there. So yeah. I might also light up the fingers. Maybe some shadows in here. Something more interesting to happen here. And there. Some light on this hand. But also not that much. Actually, the bones might catch some light. a bit more light because they are like protruding a bit more, so it would make sense for them to catch a bit more light. Okay. And some areas, like general areas like in here, I usually like to give it the higher the heart shape contrast. So the shape like in here I would like to be a little bit more pronounced. Since I don't know if this is like a right word for it, but yeah, a bit more green. So the forearm muscle will like wrap around nicely. A more green shadow here. I could actually search for like a Shrek 3 reference when he's like standing on a field. I guess there should be something like this. Shrek 1 not so much because it's a bit old in terms of like render techniques and everything, but Shrek 3 actually might be a good reference source for this guy. I might check it and see how it will do. If it will be a like valuable resource. But yeah, it does look kinda okay-ish. The only thing I will separate still is the belt, because I want it to be added last, in case I would like to change some of the things in here. Soften those and those. Yeah, I kinda like how it turns out at the moment. I make the feet brighter. I wonder what the autocolor autotone will say, as always. Autotone, pretty nothing happen. Auto contrast, I kinda like it, slightly darker, and autocolor, it makes him blue. I don't like it at all. I prefer the green one. And the background and the newer background, the older background. Let me keep the both versions. Let's see what it will do with this as autocolor. It does some really weird stuff with the autocolor. And auto contrast is kinda okay-ish. And auto tone, also really weird. I might also try to make him like black and white and try to use neural filters. You won't be able to see it. Yeah, it will display and colorize. I wonder what it will think about it. Huh. I want to do more green. This is nice. This is like the auto color feature in the colorize profile. Retro high something. Retro high. This is the only thing why I really like those neural filters. They do add this like random thing to it that you might never even think to add. Retro green, what will happen? Retro green is really cool. It makes him undead. Retro faded. A retro red, let's check this one. Retro brown and retro dark will be the last. I do enjoy those. They look cool. It kind of makes it look like a really old artwork. It is interesting, I would say. So yeah, I guess today this will be all for this one. I will continue on the next stream with this fella. Yeah, I think the plan for the next stream will to be just like render the rest, so the hands, the spear, the feet, and just go over it with a different pass to make it look nicer. And yeah, and I will maybe try to later like combine all those, like to work a bit more in the background, so it won't look as photo-y, because it kind of does annoy me a bit more. Kind of does. It is a slight problem. at the moment. So yeah, thanks for watching, and see ya to the next time.